now. I'll wait until the stream shows up on my computer over here, and then we will go ahead and yeah, start talking about sarrusophones. Plural, I do have two with me. Looks like I do have a few people in the room. Someone is first. Don't know why I got excited when I saw this, but I low-key am because everybody is excited about sarrusophones. That is a fact. So about scoring for these instruments, assuming you have a sarrusophone and a contrabassoon in the same ensemble, how do you score both as separate voices? Oh, okay, that is a great question. The reality is it's very, very unusual to see both a sarrusophone and a contrabassoon. Now, when I say sarrusophone, we're going to, for now, just assume that it is going to be a contrabass sarrusophone. So there are a handful of pieces, and I'm talking probably under 10 out there that have parts for both contrabassoon and sarrusophone. The ones that I can think of off the top of my head, some of the larger unperformed and almost unperformable works of Sarabji have both contrabassoon and sarrusophone in it. And the other one I can think of is Joseph Holbrook's Symphony 2, Apollo and the Seaman. Man, you gotta be careful when you say that title. Those are the only ones that I know of. Now, can you use both of them? Sure, I don't see why not. They are different. Oh yes, thank you. Paderewski's Third Symphony. Paderewski's Third Symphony is it's a much more unusual situation because that is there are three contrabass sarrusophones in that piece, and they have a very, very different role. They're almost like a separate voice from everything else in there. They almost have like their own leitmotif, and they don't really play with anybody else, and they play very, very little in the whole piece. It's like a 75-minute piece, and the sarrusophones maybe play for like 25 measures. A little bit of movement 1, 2, and 3, and that's it. A minuscule part, but there are several recordings out there where the sarrusophones aren't even used. It's cool when they do, but I mean, that's a lot of expense to go through to have 3 sarrusophones. But yeah, you can. I think the best analogy is tuba versus cimbasso. In, say, you're doing movie scoring. Tuba is for that big, fat, round sound that just supports everything. Cimbasso is there to cut through everything. It's like a laser. And that's kind of what the sarrusophone can do if you have both a contrabassoon and a sarrusophone. But the instances of both being used is very, very rare, very unusual. Okay, let's see. Do we have any other questions? Not quite. Oh, why did that stop? No. I do not. Sorry, I got to. I have. Oh, somebody actually. Okay, very cool. Why was the sarrusophone invented? Okay. Give me a second. This is YouTube's playback is being a butt. Okay, why was the sarrusophone invented? So, in the 1850s, there was basically like a French decree went out and basically said, you'll need to stop using oboes and bassoons in the military bands. And there's probably several reasons for that. One was they don't produce a huge amount of volume. I mean, bassoons and oboes are quieter instruments unless you're dealing with beginner oboes, and then those are just loud as can be. But, um, uh, so the idea was to produce an instrument that could be used outdoors. Now, it's not only that the oboes and bassoons were soft, they're also wooden. And wooden instruments outdoors, particularly those made of grenadilla wood or rosewood, which the French oboes and bassoons were at that time, boy, they want to crack when they go outside. So to prevent that, they would make them in metal, and they're going to make them with a wider bore, so that means they are going to be much, much louder. So that is one aspect of sarrusophones. They have a much bigger volume level than oboes and bassoons of similar sizes. The thing is, though, that it never caught on. The French bands, they kept using the oboes and bassoons. You do see less use of them during the second half of the 19th century. You can look at some French band music of the time, and often you will not see bassoons and oboes in there. You will see other woodwinds, a lot of brass, saxophones occasionally. Bassoons and oboes, not as much. But even the French scores I found don't really have sarrusophone parts, so they never took off. I have actually yet to find any original band music from the 1900s, the 1800s, 19th century, that has anything other than a contrabass sarrusophone part. So no alto, no tenor, no baritone, no bass, no soprano, sarrusophone parts. If you ever find any of that, please send it my way. I would love to be able to find that and study it and figure out how they're being used. But that music just does not exist, or is so unknown that it's not in any collections right now. I think I missed a question. Can it pair with concha clarinets? Absolutely. A good composer, a good orchestrator can pair any instrument with any other instrument, and you can do it beautifully. It is all about the effect you want, what you're going for, the sound. Believe it or not, I think you can actually put contrabass, clarinet, and sarrusophone together and get a very interesting simulacrum of a wind double bass. Sarrusophone has the upper partials that a string bass has that a contrabass clarinet lacks. But the contrabass clarinet has those real fundamentals. And I think if you actually pair those two instruments together, the contrabass sarrusophone and a contrabass clarinet, and you do it really tastefully, like a nice soft piano, you can almost sound like a double bass section. Have you heard of an instrument called a rothophone? I think it might be similar to the sarrusophone. So yes, the rothphone, and it is rothphone, not rothophone, was an instrument developed in Italy that is, for all intents and purposes, a sarrusophone. They were rewrapped to look more like saxophones. So all the rothphones have saxophone-like shape. They don't retain the bassoon-like shape. Soprano rothphones and soprano sarrusophones are surprisingly similar to one another. The biggest difference I've heard between the two, and I've yet to confirm this with actual instruments in hand, is that soprano sarrusophones were double-walled, like you would see in double-walled clarinets. The French maker Quinon was quite well known for making double-walled clarinets, whereas the soprano rothphones were only single-walled. Now, whether this applies to all of the instruments, I don't know, but I've heard this on good authority from people who actually know the soprano sarrusophones fairly well. So that's one fundamental difference. The other difference is most rothphones pretty much everyone I've ever seen a picture of only go down to the low B natural. I have seen drawings of instruments that go to B flat, but I've never actually seen a photo or documented instrument that goes to B flat. They all go to B natural, whereas every sarrusophone will go to B flat. That is actually a fundamental characteristic of the sarrusophone, is the low B flat. Other than that, there's not a huge difference between sarrusophones and rothphones. What is the lowest member of the family? Okay, the lowest sarrusophone, and is also probably the rarest, is the B flat contrabass. It, for the longest time, was the lowest woodwind instrument made. Going down to A flat 0, the A flat half a step below the low A on the piano. Now, this is almost a mythical creature. To the best of my knowledge, maybe 3 or 4 exist in the world. And that's it. Very, very few are made. I know that the famous jazz multi-instrumentalist Scott Robinson has had access to one before. I don't know if he has one in his collection or not, but I have seen pictures of him playing it. And I know there is one in a collection in Germany. Those are the only 2 instruments I know for certain are still around. Does the reed contrabass also share similarities with the sarrusophone? Okay, the reed contrabass, the contrabass arancia, is a totally different instrument. The only similarities are it uses a double reed and it's metal. It is the single most bizarre woodwind that I can think of. It uses a completely non-standard fingering system. In fact, its fingering system is similar to that, not of any other woodwind instrument, but of the ophicleide. Now, let me tell you, I have an ophicleide. In fact, I've got one like right here. I can get it out if I want to, and if you guys want me to get it out, I will. But the fingering system on an ophicleide is terrible. It was designed so that the keys will travel the smallest amount. Not in any logical order, just the touch is going to be as close as possible to where the tone hole is. So there is absolutely no logical rhyme or reason to why a ophicleide or a reed contrabass's fingering scheme is that way. It just is. It, for obvious reasons, died a needed death. There are a few people who still try and play it, and you will rarely see a reed contrabass still used in a very large Italian band, like the Italian, big Italian police band. They may still use it, and you may still be able to get one from Orsi, but it is an evolutionary dead end. If it were retrofitted with a more woodwind-like fingering system, it might have a fighting chance, but to be honest, it is an instrument that is very difficult to control. I actually have a friend in the area who has a reed contrabass, and maybe we might be able to kind of compare the reed contrabass and a sarrusophone, get them in the same room and see really what the sound difference is. Yes, there will be a sound difference. I think the reed contrabass is going to be even louder than a sarrusophone is, and let me tell you, the sarrusophone is loud. It is the loudest double reed instrument you can imagine. But I can obliterate a group just playing on a sarrusophone easily. Okay, what else do we got? Kind of off topic, but what is the lowest historic wind instrument? Define historic. I mean, if you are going to use that route, that B flat contrabass sarrusophone is the lowest. bar none. That's it. The Baroque contrabassoon that would go down to a written low B flat. That is probably the lowest you'll see. That if it's in Baroque pitch at 415, that's going to sound actually A natural, A0, which is the lowest note of a contraforte or a contrabassoon. But really, the lowest historic instrument is the B flat contrabass sarrusophone. Hello, Tethys. Lowest, but still in use. Oh. Well, I mean, that's kind of a can of worms, isn't it? Define still in use. I mean, the answer has to be the Baroque contrabassoon. It goes down to low B flat. Classical contrabassoons go down to low C. Occasionally, you can put an extension in a classical contrabassoon to go to B flat. Whether or not that has much historic precedence, I'm not 100%. All right. Take a little break, get a little water there. Didn't you write a piece for 6 sarrusophones? Yes, I have a sarrusophone sextet that I wrote 20 years ago, something like that. I wrote it in college. It has actually been performed. I have a video of it being performed somewhere. I'd have to go into the depths of archive. They did like a quick run through and realized, oh, this is actually going to take a lot of practice, and moved on to like simple things. Because what it was a gathering of people who had 6 sarrusophones, and very few people there. One of them in the group, the one who actually owned the sarrusophones, actually played it on any regular basis. How and when did orchestras begin using the sarrusophone? We know the exact piece. It goes back to Camille Saint-Saëns. He is the person who really originated the use. And he wrote a cantata called the Marriage of Prometheus, Les Noces de Prométhée. Do I have it on my shelf over here? Saint-Saëns. I think I do. Yep, there it is. Les Noces de Prométhée. This is the first piece that used sarrusophone. I won't say calls for it. What happened is this was for a competition. Saint-Saëns was fairly young when he wrote this. This is Opus 19. And he started writing when he was 6, 5, somewhere around there. So this is early Saint-Saëns. He won the competition. He made it anonymous. And he won, and then the judges were like, we don't actually like you. No, we're not going to actually give you the prize. We're not going to give you the money to actually perform the piece. And Saint-Saëns was like, oh, hell no. Nah. And so he gathered up all the forces to do this. And it is a large piece, by the way. And I'm trying to see if it's got a date on here. It doesn't, but anyway, he got it performed under his own impetus. And he called for a contrabassoon. Well, in 1865, when this piece was written, there's no contrabassoon in France. You can't find one. The only thing you can find is a sarrusophone. That's it. You won't get a French contrabassoon for another 40-something years. So, he wanted a contrabassoon. He got a sarrusophone. He actually purchased said sarrusophone for it to be used. By the way, this piece is really fascinating in its orchestration. It also, Unusual for French orchestration, calls for a bass trombone. The French did not use bass trombone at all, and contrabass trombone, as well as 3 saxophones, 2 altos, and a baritone. By the way, that performance in 1860, 1865, somewhere around there, probably the last time this piece was played. It has been completely forgotten. Nobody's performed it. It is one of those that, man, I just love to hear a recording of it. But no, this is a cantata by a major composer. No performances, no recordings of it. If you do know of a recording of the Le Noche de Prométhée, send it to me. Can you talk about Arthur Clappé? Oh, let me go get the Clappé book. This is... Okay. Arthur Clappé. All right. Sorry, I'm darting all around. So this is Arthur Clappé, the Wind Band and its Instruments, their history, construction, acoustics, technique, and combination for bandmasters, bandsmen, students, and the general reader. A mouthful. Well, Arthur Clappé was the director of the West Point Band. He was very, very influential at the time in American wind bands. And let's see, when was this written? 1911. Oh, it's actually almost 10 years older than I thought. Interesting. So Clappé was really, really influential in starting up the Army bands. The Army did not have bands up until right after World War I. General Pershing requested that all Army battalions or units have their own band. A total of, I think it was 148 units. And so the decree went out that they were going to have a band. Clappé was the one who was going to dictate what the instrumentation was. And in that dictation, Clappé said there's going to be a sarrusophone. 1 E-flat contrabass sarrusophone. And so it went out that all the Army bands in the United States, 148 of them, were going to have an E-flat contrabass sarrusophone. Now, where are they going to get those instruments? Well, at the time, sarrusophones had only been made in France. A few companies had made them. Gautreaux, the inventor of it, Tribert, Queenon, and Buffet Crampon. Well, they wanted an American made, so they could actually, support American-made products and whatnot. So they called on the C.G. Conn Company. And this is a C.G. Conn contrabass sarrusophone. These were made at the behest of Arthur Clappé, again, the director at West Point. He is the one that said there needed to be sarrusophones. Now, I'll set this down very carefully because it's sitting on another instrument. Clappé talks about, in the book, other sarrusophones. Particularly, he talks about the alto, how it's an absolutely lovely voice. He also talks about bringing in the bass oboe. Well, who is Clappé working with? Well, here is where you need to do a little bit of digging. Who is the most influential band composer at the time? Well, between 1911 and 1921, when the bands form in the armies, Arthur Clappé is working with one Percy Aldridge Granger. Name sound familiar? Clappé and Granger are colleagues. Granger very well could be the person. Okay, there's a cat fight going on outside of my door. Amazing. Um, anyway, Clapet and Granger are colleagues. At the time, Granger is enlisted in the Army bands. He is writing his band music. Pieces like Colonial Song, Molly on the Shore, and the Children's March, who Granger plays the piano at the premiere because it has a big piano part in a band piece. By the way, completely unheard of before this. And who's conducting it? Arthur Clapet. I will probably do a full video once I can really work out the timeline on how this all kind of shakes down. But the connection between Granger and Clapet is strong, and I think it's the combination of those two gentlemen that led to the Sarrusophone being included in the Army bands. Okay, yes, so not Sarrusophone related, but I see in Lenoche the saxes are between the breath and the percussion. Was that normal for the time? There was no normal for the time. Saxophones were so new that nobody knew exactly what to do with them. There was no standard. Not that there was a lot of sax in orchestra. Yeah. How do I use sarrusophones in my own compositions? So, okay. I have not written a lot with sarrusophones in it. I did some early on in my composition career when I was at UTA, University of Texas at Arlington, as an undergrad. And that's because I played sarrusophone quite a bit there. We didn't have a contrabassoon. All we had was a sarrusophone, a con, a silver-plated con. And so I would use that as contrabassoon. And I would use it in a few pieces here and there, basically functioning as the contrabassoon. Now, it is in the final score of Symphony 3. Now, to be fair, I did not conceive Symphony 3 morning. Jay, what continent are you on? Who knows? Anyway, I did not conceive in the initial score of Symphony 3 of having sarrusophones. In my expansionist era of the piece, if you will call it that, I added 4 sarrusophone parts: baritone, bass, and 2 E-flat contras. And I basically just kind of use those to punch up some things, add a little bit of bite. Really, I was adding them to the low brass more so than the low woodwinds. I would really like to explore using sarrusophones in a larger band piece where in a band piece where I have like a full section soprano through contrabass. I would really like to do that, maybe down the road in a few years. There are some things prohibiting that. Yes, I do have a few chamber works. So I have 3 chamber works for sarrusophone. I have the 2 songs for contrabass sarrusophone, which Richard Bobo premiered, and so far has been the only performance of that. You can see that on YouTube on his channel, Subcontrabassoon, and plays it quite lovely. There is the Fatagan for 2 contrabass sarrusophones. Has not been performed yet, though I might see if I can get that performed at some point in the not too distant future. And I also have Veranos, which is a piece for alto sarrusophone and piano. And again, we might be able to get that performed sometime next year. We'll see. Actually, I think one of the members of Trio Lazard has performed it, and they were supposed to send me a recording, but haven't yet. What makes a sarrusophone so much louder than a contrabassoon? Okay, good question. So, a few things factor into that. Give me like 30 seconds. I'm going to go grab a contrabassoon reed, and I'll show you. Okay, this is a contrabassoon reed right here. And this is a sarrusophone reed. And you can see that it's a hell of a lot bigger. Now, I actually have two sarrusophone reeds here. This is the one I mostly use. I also have a Van Doren. Believe it or not, Van Doren makes a sarrusophone reed. And that's it. This is the largest double reed you can buy. Believe it or not, the internal volume of this reed and the other one I just showed are pretty similar. So you can see this is a wide boy, this is a long boy. But internal volume is going to be pretty similar, and I'm dribbling water all over my floor. Okay, so we have, I saw two sarrusophones in the thumbnail, obviously the contrabass. What is the second one? Okay, the second one, let me grab that thing real quick. This is a baritone sarrusophone, and it is not in working condition. Otherwise, I would be playing it. I would be having a blast playing this thing. But alas, no, it does not play. It is missing the vocal. And it's actually missing a key, the side B flat. So, unfortunately, she doesn't play. But I can ask, I can answer some questions about it if we get there. I got a backlog here. Is it true that the University of Illinois once used 6 sarrusophones? No, that is incorrect. They once used 8? Alto, tenor, baritone, bass, E-flat, contrabass, C contrabass. No, you're right. They did use 6. And then they had 1 Rothphone in there. So they would have had 7 sarrus-like instruments on stage. But yes, they did... they did use a section. This is only in a couple years in the 1920s. They still have the collection of sarrusophones at the University of Illinois. They did recently restore their Con E-flat contrabass and their Queenon C contrabass. That C contrabass is one of only probably 10 or so in the world. You should try playing the contrabassoon with a sarrusophone reed. Do you mean the other way around? Try the sarrusophone with a contrabassoon reed. Because I don't have a contrabassoon. And here's the thing. This won't fit. Oh, and I never did fully answer the question why it is so much louder. Partly the reed is so much bigger, I can put a lot more air behind it. I can put as much air into it as I can on bari sax. 2, the bore starts bigger and gets bigger. It has a much wider cone. The wider the cone, the bigger the sound. How does it compare to the sub-contrabassoon reed? Okay, I'll be back. I got one of those in the other room too. Okay, give me just a second. All right, so years ago, Richard gave me a 3D printed mock-up of a sub-contrabassoon reed. This is about what he did end up using. And you can see across the tip, they're about the same. This is the sub-contrabassoon reed is a little bit longer, but it's also an octave and a half lower. So, it is, of course, 3D printed. It does not play. It is solid. Let's see, what do we got? How does it compare to the subconscious percent if you ever get the chance? In that case, would you ever play in a jazz band if you ever had the opportunity? You always say that being heard is a problem. Okay, I am probably going to be bringing this to jazz band on Sunday. We're getting ready for our Christmas concert in the next week, and yes, I think I'm going to use it in You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. It's a bass trombone feature. I mean, come on. I gotta do it. Do I still like marching band? Yes. No further comment. All right, what else we got? What key is the baritone in? The baritone is in E flat. It is the exact same pitch as the baritone saxophone. It's one octave higher than the contrabass. But yeah, it's E flat, just like a baritone saxophone. Sarrusophones are 1-to-1, saxophone versus sarrusophone. Baritone in E flat, baritone in E flat, tenor in B flat, tenor in B flat. By the way, the only sarrusophones I have ever seen in person, I've seen 3 contrabasses. I've seen I've seen 4 contrabasses. This baritone, and I've seen 1 soprano in a museum. And that's it. I've never seen in person an alto, tenor, or bass. Apollo and the Seaman has a very unusual history. Yes, it does. It was one of the first pieces of multimedia where it had almost a movie that went with it in 1911. It has 2 sarrusophone parts that were probably not even played. And then it has probably never been performed since 1911. So 114, 13 years, that piece has never been played. Could it be used for dubstep? I don't know what that is. Maybe. All right, what else we got? I guess I probably should play some of it for you. Let's get out the reed. Let's get out the old one. The wider reed I have was custom built by Keith Lorraine 20-something years ago for me. At the time, he was the only person I could find making sarrusophone reeds, and I ordered one from him. I think it may have been mail order back then, that long ago. What has been written for the baritone, if anything? As far as I can find, nothing, to be 100% honest. I have a part for it in Symphony 3. I've got a part for it in that sextet. But no, there's nothing that I've ever found for baritone sarrusophone. You're playing on a 20-year-old reed? Yep, I am. It's, if you don't play on a reed for 20 years, it's not going to go bad. And this is such a huge reed that it takes forever for it to wear out. most recent piece you'll be able to find that uses a sarrusophone besides mine? There have been some German avant-garde stuff that I've found. And you've got Stravinsky's Threnny. That's from like 1956 or so. Is the B flat the highest note? So I just played up to a written G scale. So going up to B flat 4. So let me, the high range is finicky, and I'm having to kind of relearn some fingerings up there. So that's an altissimo A, sounding C5, C4, middle C. Could I try multiphonics on it? Now, it doesn't really want to do multiphonics. Very similar to contrabassoon. Contrabassoon does not like doing multiphonics. I probably sit here for hours to figure out some multiphonics, but it doesn't want to. The tone holes are so big, it's just going to vent. I did think of another piece. There is a piece by a composer named Barney Childs called The Golden Bubble. It's from like 1980. It's for solo contrabass, sarrusophone, and percussion. I have the score to it somewhere. I've never tried playing it. It's not my cup of tea, that kind of music, but I have it. What's your pick for the most ingenious usage scoring of the instrument? I don't know, to be 100%. It's got to be, yeah, I do know. It's got to be the Paderewski Symphony 3, having the 3 contrabass sarrusophones. I mean, that in and of itself is so out there. I mean, who knows where he got the idea for that, but that's got to be it. 3 contrabass sarrusophones in a symphony that only come in a couple times in a 75-minute piece. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you just asked the question again. Yeah, so one of the biggest questions I have been asked on it is the fingering system. The fingering system is basically saxophone. Let me see if I can get all the... This is awkward. So yeah, it's basically saxophone fingerings. There are differences. There's no side F sharp. There's only one B flat on the instrument. It is. Something like that for Molly on the Shore. You've got to use the side B flat. There's no 1 and 1. There's no bis key. That really limits what you can do on it. How would it sound with a single reed mouthpiece? So, the first year I played it, I used a single reed mouthpiece. We had a old Holton soprano sax mouthpiece that had a cork extension on it. And it didn't sound that dissimilar to this. It had a little bit of a different articulation. The articulation was much more of a single reed articulation. It didn't have the bite. Once I finally got over to a double reed, I could get that bite in there. And I can get a much more smooth sound on here than I'm doing. Uh, even has the palm keys like a sax. No, it does not. It does not have any palm keys. There is one key here. This is an over the break trill. Ostensibly, it's for like C to D. Except it goes C to C is D sharp. So it's actually really in the acoustically wrong position. Okay. Oh, I love this question. Would you want a modernized sarrusophone? If so, what would be changed, added? Okay. Yes, this has been a very fruitive area of discussion I have been having with the owner of these instruments, because they are, again, not mine. Yes, a modern sarrusophone would be wonderful. Number one, the ergonomics of the E-flat contrabass are absolutely terrible. I have, in all the years I've played it, I still have not found a good way to hold it. The octave mechanism is arcane. There are some benefits to it, but there are 3 independent octave keys. So to go up that second octave, I have to switch between 3 thumb keys, 1 for the right thumb, 2 for the left thumb. The baritone, on the other hand, actually has those 3 keys, but they're all for the left thumb. 1, 2, 3. And I cannot for the life of me remember which is which, because they're in a different arrangement on this instrument, because of course they are. But yes, I absolutely think a modernized instrument would be lovely. It's got to have more than 1 B flat. It's got to have 1 and 1. It's got to have a bis key on it. I think all modern sarrusophones, if you're going to do them, need to go to low A. That's going to give you a concert C on the E-flat instruments like the baritone and the contrabass. I think a semi-automatic octave key, where you can press 1 key for the entire second octave, and then have a second key that'll take you up the 12th to get into the altissimo range. Still no palm keys. I don't think you need the palm keys. Can I do any special effects? Not really. I can play hella loud. That's about it. Yes, I mean, I can probably flutter tongue. I can do a few things on there, but what is my second best instrument? Saxophone, although it's becoming low clarinet slightly. Is it more agile than contrabassoon? No, it is not. It's simply because contrabassoon has modernized. Contrabassoon has evolved. The sarrusophone has not evolved since 1900. The con instruments that were made in the 1920s were direct copies of buffet instruments. Either buffet or queen, but I think they were copies of buffets. And those were made in the early 1900s, and there was no evolution past then. You want to hear Beadwo on the Barry Sarrus when it's functional. That would be kind of cool. It does go really high, though, up to the G sharp. It's doable, yeah, to get up that high. I'm just trying to think, because you're going up to a high F. I mean, it shouldn't be a problem. I can get a high G on the contrabass, so a high F on a baritone shouldn't be that difficult. I want to hear that thing playing, though, yes. Can I do the right of spring on the Barry? I can't do anything on the Barry. There's no vocal. It's missing a key. Nothing works on a Barry. It goes to F, yeah. Why did the sarrusophone die out? Okay, so the sarrusophone was never considered an independent instrument. It was always a substitute for the contrabassoon. As such, once contrabassoons became available, the sarrusophone had no more purpose for existing because the instrument that it was supposed to be replacing was finally there. Buffet in France did not come out with their contrabassoon until about 1912. Yvette and Schaefer did have a contrabassoon about 10 years before that. So you've got a time period from about 1900 to 1912 where you've got some changeover in there. And you can see this in French scores. Sarrusophone slowly fades out, contrabassoon slowly fades into the scores. In fact, there are a few scores where you can find composers not entirely sure what instrument they are writing for. The most famous of these is Ravel's Daphnis and Chloe, where the part says contrabassoon, but if you actually go through the score, there's one point early on, like very first few pages, where it does say sarrusophone on it. And so you can very much tell that Ravel was still thinking sarrusophone. But by 1912, that's kind of your point when contrabassoon starts to really take over. Now, I want to kind of pinpoint it a little further than just 1912. And it very well could be that there were orchestras still using sarrusophones well after that, because yes, Buffet had come out with their contrabassoon, but not everybody would have had it. So which orchestras had a contrabassoon, which orchestras had a sarrusophone? We don't know 100%. The piece I'm really fascinated by that could very well have had sarrusophone in it is actually the Rite of Spring. It is right in that zone where, well, this could be the new Buffet contrabassoon, or these could be the older sarrusophones. It's very dependent on whether or not the players at that time had made the switch. As far as in the United States, the only place they were really used were in the army bands. And the Great Depression basically killed it with any instrument development. So you've got this period from about 1921, 1922 to 1929. You've got 7 years where the 1920s, the golden age of the saxophone. We've got a little bit of sarrusophone in there as well. But after that Great Depression, it's pretty much done. You will still see it. Kahn still offers them for sale, probably up until about 1940. Okay, are you thinking about 3D printing accessories for the baritone? You could maybe 3D print a vocal. No, we are going to make the vocal. We are the owner of the instrument can make vocals. We just have to get dimensions, and I'm going to help them. So it will get fully restored. No 3D printed parts. What is your ideal sarrusophone usage in a wind ensemble? Oh, I don't know. I have thought about this for like 30 years. And I don't know if there is an ideal usage. You could do the Percy Grainger route and just score for a single contrabass, as well as a few other composers, Florence Schmidt, John Philip Sousa. There's at least one march of his that has a sarrusophone part, Bullets and Bayonets. I have the original sarrusophone part to that march. Or you could go all hog wild and do a full like sextet in there, soprano through contrabass, and see what you could do. That's a huge undertaking though. I talk about it a little bit in my book about the possibilities of it, but I mean, there's so you've talked about its role in solo works and your huge ensembles. You have a role in ensembles in between sizes. Yes, I think any instrument can have a role in any ensemble if you are creative enough. I would genuinely love to see like a quartet, quintet included in a modern wind band, just to see what would happen. There's this untapped potential. I'm gonna go grab something. So I have on a bookshelf dozens of black binders like this. I have been collecting instrument articles for 20 something years. And this is the folder for Sarrusophone. This is all articles I've collected over the years for Sarrusophone. There is a fascinating article in here from the 1920s about a wind band in Boston. And I'm going to try and find it because it has, for me, one of the most... here we go. This is an article entitled, "And Then I Had 5 Sarrusophones." And there's a passage in here, as a composer, has fascinated me for like 20 years. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to read this whole paragraph. Tone quality is reedy, much more so than the double reed woodwinds. There was no oscilloscope existing in the 1920s to picture this tone quality and arrive at a percentage of pitch compared with a percentage of non-musical reed noise. But here is a non-scientific description of the tone quality of our sarrusophones. When playing 5-part counterpoint, otherwise unaccompanied, often sounded like a genuine string quartet playing continuously sforzando on genuine Stradivarius instruments. That's a fascinating paragraph there. The Sarrusophone quintet that they had alto through contrabass, sounded like a quartet, or quintet probably in this case, of Stradivarius violins, all playing sforzando. That's not a sound that you hear in a modern wind band at all. There's no instrument in there that's going to give you a string-like sound. Excuse me. So that paragraph alone has fascinated me for 20 years. And I want to know what that sound is like. Are there notes that are not great on the instrument? Not really. It's actually pretty well... pretty even instrument throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and play a chromatic scale. All right, so I'm going to start on the low B flat. Get the hair out of my mouth. And therein is where some of the ergonomics. Sorry, that's where it gets funky. And I've got to really figure out some of the fingerings up there that are a little bit better. Okay. What's a sarrusophone size you would really want to get your hands on? Bass. I would love to explore a bass. It's kind of that in-between size. Do I have a scan of that or a link? Yeah, I can scan that and upload that to Richard's server. Have you ever imagined an alternate universe where the sarrusophone was the de facto bass woodwind in ensembles where the conch bassoon was extinct? No. I don't. I just skimmed right. Conch bassoon goes down to low C, but it's doubled in pitch by basses, heavily imply fifth. Conch bassoon 2 never goes below D. I think conch bassoon 2 actually does go to a C sharp, which is the lowest note of this instrument. It's entirely possible to play the Rite of Spring on sarrusophone. I don't see why it couldn't be done. What instrument am I looking to get next? Right now, I am not planning on buying any more instruments. I I have a few too many right now. I'm in the process of selling a couple. If I were to get a next instrument, I'm always going to be on the lookout for something like a basset horn. Sarrusophones are getting my own. There's ideas there. Okay. And actually, I think I can probably talk about the ideas because this is something that the owner of the instruments and I have been talking about for years. We think we can actually reproduce these instruments. In all seriousness, actually start copying them, making modifications, modernizing them, and then eventually offering them for sale. This is probably a long-term project, and we will probably start with some of the smaller sizes because those will be easier to produce. Maybe the baritone, maybe the alto. The owner does have an alto that will be coming down in the next few days. But yes, that is kind of the goal, and hopefully within the next few years, we may have a working prototype of a modern sarrusophone. Bass sarrusophone would be the counterpart to the great bassoon, right? That makes sense. More or less, yeah, it would be roughly the counterpart to the great bassoon. Was there any attempt to revive the instrument on your part? I think I just covered it. Yeah, we are, the owner and I are planning on reviving sarrusophones. Yes. There'd be a lot of manufacturing involved though, particularly making body mandrels, taking lots of measurements. Yeah, I know Valeria. Yeah, she played a lovely rendition of the Swan on the alto sarrusophone. We corresponded a little bit. I've got measurements for reeds. But yes, but yeah, the idea that we've had is to make some new sarrusophones, modernize them, see if they can have a second life, and not market them as oboe and bassoon substitutes, but market them as their own independent, viable instrument. And I think that's kind of an exciting idea. Any updates in my life to report on? Yes, so I posted this silly little video the other day of me playing the children's march on the sarrusophone, and it has gone inexplicably viral. In that, as of a little while ago, it had gone over 330,000 views on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm like, oh. People like sarrusophone? And so that's kind of why for better or worse, I'm going to milk that sarrusophone wagon because it has, it's popular, and I've never been popular. The people, they do yearn for the Sarrusophone. Apparently, um, and there is a video in the works that I'm going to have to do, talking about the paradox of unusual instruments. How's the recording for Symphony 3 coming along? Very slowly. Very, very slowly. I might do some recording on some of the sarrusophone parts tomorrow, now that I have instruments here. Obviously I can't record the baritone part, but the baritone part is already recorded. So, but I can record all the contrabass parts. Any further updates on the great bassoon? A little bit. I did some key manufacturing a couple weeks ago. I made some more keys. The big thing that I've been working on is my Symphony No. 6, and that has a premiere in May, and I have got to finish it. I'm 40% of the way through it now, having started back in September. And so I'm going to spend a lot of time tomorrow, in between family time, working on Symphony 6. What are some sources, literature on the sarrusophone you can recommend? There's not a lot out there that is a good definitive source. Cecil Forsyth's orchestration has a couple pages on it. It has some good information. Anthony Baines, Woodwind Instruments and Their History, is the other really good source. Again, it's only about a page and a half, but the Baines does have in it a very rare picture of the B-flat contrabass. Symphony 5. Symphony 5 is basically finished. I just haven't released it. I actually just have to compose the finale. And I will do that at some point. Technically 6 probably should be called 5, but I'm not going to worry about that. What else? I haven't talked about the sound of the instrument. How would you describe the sound and character across the registers? Oh, talking about sound is like trying to describe a painting to a blind person. I can talk about it all I want. Whether or not it makes any sense. Sorry, talking for an hour, my throat is completely scratchy. Sound across the register. I think it's better to show you. So, like any woodwind, fundamental octave is going to be the richest. Huh. I must have hit a resonant frequency of something in the room because that note just kept ringing. Yeah, something else in here has a resonant frequency of the B flat, an octave and a fifth above that. That is so bizarre. Now, the second octave is going to be a little less full, again, like any woodwind. And then the upper register starts to get a little bit more strained after that. Something like that. Besides sarrusophone, if there was one instrument you really wish to make a comeback, what would it be? Oh, an instrument to make a comeback? alto clarinet. I mean, alto clarinet needs to make a comeback before sarrusophone does. That's just a given. Its use, its decline, basically neglect is what it was. It was just pure neglect. But yeah, alto clarinet, and that one is starting to come back. People are actually starting to realize, oh yeah, this instrument isn't as bad as we thought it was. So, all right. Oh yeah, I've been going an hour and 10 minutes now. No wonder my voice is. Why are double reed instruments so maligned? Single reed instruments are abundant, but double reeds seem to have been neglected nowadays. Why is that? Because double reeds are just inherently more difficult. Producing a sound on a double reed is more difficult than producing a sound on a single reed. I won't say that they are maligned. I don't think people actually malign them. You will have band directors who simply do not know much about double reeds. And that's because, to be quite honest, music education is for many instruments is very cursory. A band director may only get the chance to look at 3 woodwind instruments in their 1 semester course of woodwind techniques. And what are they going to spend the most time on? Flute, clarinet, and saxophone, because that's where the most students will be. If they're already a woodwind player, then yes, they'll go to another. They will get one of the double reeds, maybe both. But you know, it's not something that, you know, if you had 2 semesters, and some colleges do, you might get both. But chances are that your band director just doesn't play or doesn't know double reeds, and that, I don't think that's being maligned. I think that's just the reality of things. When did you first learn about sarrusophone, and when did you first hear one? Okay, so we need to go back a long time to a time called 1992, and I was a baby band nerd, and I got this book called Woodwind Instruments and Their History by Anthony Baines. If you do not have this book on your shelf, shame on you. Go get it. It's cheap. It's like the classic text for woodwind instruments. It is an absolute necessity for anybody who wants to know things about woodwinds. Yes, it is a little bit out of date because it was published around 1950. But you know what? There's only one book that's more up to date than that, and shameless self-plug. Band Orchestration Volume 2 by me. This is the most up-to-date book on woodwinds. It says every woodwind you could possibly want in it, and several you don't want. It is the modern successor to Anthony Baines's book, and that's kind of what I set it out to be. But yes, I got that book, and the sarrusophones were there. I was like, wait a minute, there's a family of double reed instruments that nobody talks about and nobody plays, and they're modern, and they're not these weird historical Renaissance instruments. I'm intrigued. Tell me more. And so I would go to the library and bookstores, and I would look for any reference I could find to sarrusophones. And I collected those references for decades. But yeah, it was the Anthony Baines book, Woodwind Instruments and Their History. That's when I first learned about them. Let's see. Where are sarrusophones most common in the world? Museums. I mean, you will occasionally find one in an old band hall somewhere, but most of them are going to be in museums or a collector's collection. There's no single place that you're going to find sarrusophones. There was never really a tradition of them getting used outside of some military bands. why are lower pitched sarrusophones more common than higher pitched ones? Um, Simply because the lower pitched ones had a function that was different than oboes and bassoons. Because in France there was no contrabassoon, there was no contrabassoon in France from like 1800 to 1900, actual contrabassoon. Uh, there was like a really terrible one at the Paris Conservatory that was almost unplayable. And Berlioz talks about it a little bit in his treatise on instrumentation, but essentially you just did not see a contrabassoon anywhere in France. So out of necessity, the sarrusophone took that place after about 1860 or so. And that's why you saw the lower pitch. In fact, in here, I have an article that accounts for every sarrusophone that Buffet Crampon made. And they made... For instance, let's say they look at alto. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They made 17 alto sarrusophones. That's it. They made tenor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13. They made 17 tenor sarrusophones as well. That's it. Contrabasses, though. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 2, 37. They made 37 E-flat contrabasses, 3 C contrabasses, and 3 B-flat contrabasses. I mean, I've got numbers on all the others, but they made basically twice to 3 times as many E-flat contras as anything else. There's a handful of tenors, altos, basses, baritones, very few sopranos, very few sopraninos. In fact, sopranino is probably the rarest sarrusophone. When did geographically? Yeah, there's no geographic. When did I first hear one? So this gets back to nostalgia for the early days of the internet, mid 90s, when the internet was still a really new thing. And the thing I miss most about the old internet was curation. There were people on the internet who were passionate about things, and they would create websites. There was no social media. There was no Wikipedia. You would make your own website, and you put your own information up, and you would put what you were passionate about. And that was amazing. That was brilliant. It was the best of possible things that the internet could be. It has not become that. It has not stayed that. It has become a cesspool. But there was a wonderful website called contrabass.com. It is still up. And it still looks exactly like it did in the mid-90s, and I love it. But Grant Green, who was the owner of the site, would post a few recordings of sarrusophone on there. And those tiny little snippets for years and years were all that I had to go on of what a sarrusophone sounded like. And there were recordings of E-flat contrabass and bass. And that was it. You had those 2 sarrusophones. As for other sizes, it would not be until earlier this year or maybe last year that I would hear actually good playing on the smaller sizes, soprano and alto. And like I said, that's in 30 years. It took me that long to find good recordings of the smaller sizes of sarrusophone on alto and soprano. There's a good recording of a tenor done by Lenny Pickett, the leader of the Saturday Night Live band. There's always been good recordings of baritone. You can find, I had a CD years ago of baritone sarrusophone recital, and the, bass sarrusophone recital, and then baritone. Still, baritone is probably the least heard, but my friend Nat Hefferman has one and is recorded for it. He recorded the baritone sarrusophone part in Symphony 3. What is the sax sarrusophone? Sax sarrusophone is another name for a Roth phone. They would sometimes call that instrument a sax sarrusophone because it's a sarrusophone in a saxophone shape. That's all it is. It's just a Roth phone, which is just a sarrusophone in saxophone shape. Okay, I think I'll go just a little bit more. What is the lore of Adolph Sax and sarrusophone lawsuits? Okay, so Sax was very litigious. And anytime he thought he could sue somebody for patent infringement, he would. So he sued Gautreaux when the sarrusophone came out, claiming that it was a copy of his instrument, the saxophone. And if memory serves me correctly, I'm going to have to actually dig into this. Sax lost that lawsuit, partly because Sax himself took the fingering system from Theobald Böhm. He did not come up with it himself. And putting a double reed on a conical bore instrument and using somebody else's fingering system, I mean, that's not a patentable thing. I mean, yes, I guess you could patent it, but yes, but yeah, anyway, so Sax concedes and he starts making single reed mouthpieces for sarrusophones. Thinking, well, if you can't beat them, join them. I don't know how many of those he actually made, though. There's a YouTube video of Michael Jolivet playing a bass sarrusophone. Yes, and I had Michael Jolivet's CD of his IDRS recital, and that was all on bass sarrusophone, and sadly that CD no longer works. I had it, and it was a fantastic CD, and I could listen to it and really understand the sound of the bass sarrusophone. Didn't he steal the ideas for the tuba and the contrabass clarinet? Absolutely right. Adolph Sax stole a lot. The tuba and the contrabass clarinet were invented by Wieprecht, who was the leader of the Prussian bands. Well, guess what? France did not honor Prussian copyright laws or patent laws, and so Adolph Sax just stole them, put his own twist on it, and called it his own. Hence, sax horns. I am at some point going to do a video on sax horns because they fascinate me, and there's a lot of wrong information. Do all the sarrusophones have the same range as a saxophone? More or less, yes. All the sarrusophones have about the same range. Of course, as you get higher on the sarrusophones, the range may get a little bit smaller. That's just by the nature of, reed instruments. The higher it is, the smaller the range. But it's all going to be about an octave and a half, octave and a fifth, octave and a sixth, more or less, octave and a fourth, somewhere in there. Yep. All right. I'll probably go another 5 minutes or so because my voice is very tired at this point. All right, do we have any other riveting questions? This has definitely been the most interactive Q&A I've done in a long time. Are there single reeds for them? So, yeah. When I played on a single reed mouthpiece, I just used soprano sax reeds. The con instruments would come with a alto saxophone blank that you put on there. It was an alto sax mouthpiece, but the back was not drilled out for a an alto sax neck. It was drilled out for a Sarrusophone vocal. Very, very small opening. Well, not that small for. But yeah, and so you can use anywhere from a soprano to an alto sax mouthpiece, and use those reeds on those mouthpieces. Do sarrusophones play like a bassoon at all, or are they completely different? No, sarrusophones are much more like saxophones. They have a saxophone fingering. Where a bassoon player will feel more at home is the switching between the octave keys. The saxophone players don't like doing. Have you entertained the possibility of a sarrusophone mute? Interesting story. When I got the sarrusophone at UTA, there was a trombone mute shoved in the bell. You know, I've got a trombone mute. You guys want to hear what it sounds like with a trombone mute in it? I'm going to have to go find it. Are the octave keys held or flaked? They're held down. I think I got to go find my trombone mute. I'll be back in a minute. I found a cut mute, but not a straight mute. My cut mute, my straight mute in here. Anyway, let's see. Yes, the chair stayed put. Hooray. Okay. So this is going to be terrible. Amazing. It does absolutely nothing, except on the low B flat. But no, it doesn't do anything. Stupid woodwinds. Let's see what else I'm playing. You know, I haven't played for y'all the famous Sarrusophone excerpt from The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Are you thinking of using sarrusophones in future compositions? I'm always thinking about it. Whether or not I actually will is a different story. But yeah. All right, just a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to hop off. And I hope everybody here does have a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow if you're in the U.S. If you're not, well, be happy anyway. I mean, we have a holiday tomorrow where we get around with our family and celebrate and eat a lot. Do composers not distinguish between contrabassoon and sarrusophone? In France, in the late 1800s, no, they didn't, because the contrabassoon, this was the contrabassoon. This is the instrument that they had. Does a C contrabass sarrusophone read in the same octave as contrabassoon? Yes. Now, okay, this actually does get to a interesting conundrum for sarrusophone players. So, C contrabass sarrusophone always reads in the bass clef. The other sarrusophones read in treble clef. So C contrabass sarrusophone in that regard is different. E flat contrabass sarrusophone, though, if you're going to play it, which is, I mean, to be real, that's going to be the sarrusophone you'll play. You have to be versatile in reading both bass clef and treble clef transpose notation. So you've got to be able to read both. Luckily, you've got the E flat transposition key where you can kind of read E flat music in bass clef. And so that helps. But yeah, that's what you have to do. Yeah, they would write contrabassoons in the score and use whatever they had. I can't remember if you mentioned in the video, but why did none of the other sizes other contrabass catch on? I did mention it. You'll have to go back and see it. But basically, the contrabass had a function, and it could function as a contrabassoon when none were present. The other sizes, not so much. They were always seen as a substitute. The Sorcerer's Apprentice part says sarrusophone. It says sarrusophone or contrabassoon. But the part really does say sarrusophone. Many other parts do as well. If you really look at stuff, you will find parts that say sarrusophone. Interestingly, you will probably find more sarrusophone parts out there than you will Wagner tuba parts. Nobody goes out of the way to play sarrusophone when the part says it, but they will go out of their way to play a Wagner tuba part. Go figure. All right, guys. It is 8:30, 8:31 now. My voice is shot. I appreciate everybody for stopping by and chatting. This has been a lot of fun. Expect a few more Sarruso videos out of me because evidently I won the algorithm and this stuff has blown up beyond my wildest dreams, so who knows? Yes, thank you guys so much for stopping by. This is a lot of fun. I will probably I may do a video tomorrow. I might just do a little short, who knows. But yes, thank you guys so much for sticking with me and asking some great questions. And I will see you guys later.